Time now for the nationally syndicated radio show, The World of Laurie Zoock. And now, here she is, the smart, the sexy, the savvy, divine Miss C.
And welcome to the show. I'm going to do one of my favorite types of shows today, the Masters and Legends Music Special. I've got a wonderful guest today. He is a gifted singer and an actor, and his name is Steve Fowler. Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Laurie.
Let's start at the beginning. It's the best place to start. Where are you originally from?
A little town called Mount Vernon, New York. The home of a lot of great stars, from hip-hop all the way back to Nina Simone, Ozzie Davis, and Ruby Dee, who I knew personally also. And he spoke for me one time when I was running for the school board. But Stephanie Mills, Nina Simone, Malcolm X, and Betty Shabash, his wife. I mean, there's just a lot of great people. The Allen sisters, Debbie Allen and Tricia Allen, you know, from Bill Cosby. I don't want to mention that right now. But anyway, they're all from Mount Vernon.
Wow, a lot of famous people came out of there. Well, tell me a bit about the role of music, like in your family life. Was your family comprised of musicians and singers?
Well, I'll put it this way. My father was a Baptist preacher for over 50 years. He was saved in the cornfields down in Georgia while plowing with a mule. And yes,
wow.
He got the Holy Ghost hit him, and he preached the rest of his life. And he was a great man and loving man, and everybody loved and respected him. And in fact, even Ozzie Davis came to his funeral and spoke about his cooking and his ministry, because my father was famous for his rolls and mushroom chicken. And he used to feed the ministers' conference on a Monday, once a month. He would go and fix breakfast for them, and just everybody loved him.
Wow. Now, did he sing?
Well, when I eventually got to my height of my profession on Broadway, and they interviewed him, he said they asked him if he was a singer. He said, "Yes, I'm a singer." You know, that's where he got it from. My son got it from me, but it was my mother who was really the singer. But I let him have that credit.
No, that's all right. Yeah. Now, where did your mom sing? Did she just sing for herself, or she sang in chorus?
She sang in church. Yeah, she was a beautiful singer. She had when she would open her mouth, everybody would start crying because it was such a gorgeous voice.
Wow. Now, did your mom and dad meet that way in church?
Well, my mother was like 14 when she married my father.
Wow.
And I guess they met in the fields down in Georgia, in Bartow, Georgia. And so it was love at first sight, and plus she wanted to get away.
That's funny. Well, how did you get started in your musical career?
Well, when you have a father that's a Baptist preacher, he always needs a warm-up act. So he had 3 sons. My oldest son, that was named after him, John Oscar. Me, the middle son with no middle name, Stephen. And the youngest son, David, with no middle name also. And we found out that we could actually sing. And so we were singing at the house one day, and the next thing you know, every Sunday morning we had to give him a song. So that's how we got started. Of course, after we finished singing, we'd held out our hand to get our lunch money. A little payola there, you know.
That's great. Now, what was first? I'm assuming singing was before acting?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so talk about that a little bit.
Well, I didn't start acting and singing professionally until after I got out of the service. But as far as church was concerned, I was singing in my father's church choir and with my brothers. But my music teacher, Dr. Edward Hermanson, he wasn't a doctor at the time, but I was singing in the boys' chorus and at school in junior high school. And he also drafted me to be in the quartet, you know, the barbershop quartet. And so he had a church, he was a church choir director, Methodist church choir director. And it was an older establishment, and the congregations was getting old and leaving, and so he was trying to bolster the choir. So he asked my father one day, he knocked on the door and said, "Reverend Fowler, your son has a lot of talent, and I'd like for him to sing in my Methodist church choir." And my father stopped and he looked at him for a minute. This is right in the front door because I was standing right there. And he said, well, you think he got talent? You take him. And he allowed me from the time I was in the 7th grade until a year after high school to sing in that choir. And they paid me $5 a Sunday, which I applied to my cello lessons.
Oh, wow.
And so I got a chance to sing a few solos, but mainly I got exposure to reading music. First, I could sing soprano, alto, tenor, and eventually end up singing bass, baritone. And from that, when I was going into high school, graduating into high school, I found out that I was assigned to the first musical class in high school, which was the choral society. And normally you have to audition for that. And I didn't have to audition. And a friend of mine says, how'd you get in there? Did you audition? I said, no. But that was my first class from 8 o'clock in the morning for half an hour to 8:30. And the reason was the music teacher that was there, she came to our concert that year before and drafted me into the choir. And we had a new music teacher by the time she had left, and Lex Dashnow, who I just spoke to for the first time in 35, 40 years on the telephone. I didn't know he was in New York, but he was at John Jay, and he was a real accomplished choir director, and he's been taking choirs all over the world. And his music was so perfected in the way he taught us that in high school we did Overture to Mephistopheles the first year I was there. And the second year we did Carmina Burana. This is in high school.
It's more advanced music.
Right. And the final year he wasn't there, and my music director from junior high school, Dr. Hermanson, he took over in my senior year. So we did Elijah. So I sang the role of Elijah in high school. And we had such great musicians in all aspects of music, professional timpani players, 2 sisters that were twins that played the piano, and who was his name? First chair trumpet player, Mark Gould. He played the Metropolitan Opera House first chair all these years. I think he's just about ready to retire now. But that's the kind of musicians we were with in high school.
Right, and I think part of being not far from New York City, you tended to get a better quality, and music was more important being near a major metropolitan city, maybe more so than other areas.
Well, believe it or not, the talent that I worked with was from Mount Vernon. The exposure that we had to Mount Vernon, to Manhattan, was absolutely great, of course, but as a kid I couldn't go downtown unless they took us downtown. But in junior high school, we went to the Pro Musica at Lincoln Center for madrigal music. Music teacher took us there. I saw my first opera in the 7th grade, La Traviata. And the first night with da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, the music was just fantastic. And we're sitting up on the 5th balcony in the old Metropolitan. This is before,
way in the back.
And you looking down on top of these singers' heads, and it's just like, I thought I was in heaven someplace, because it was such a wonderful experience hearing the orchestra live and seeing the singers live. They had to tear it down because the wood had gotten rotten. They couldn't save it, so they had to build Lincoln Center to replace it.
Right,
but those are the kind of experiences I had as a child. We studied the opera for months before we actually went down. And then in high school, we did the Pro Musica, and one of the kids in the madrigal group was his father owned a Chinese restaurant. And so after we went to the concert, he had a dinner for all of us. It was about 12 or 13, 14 of us. And the last thing we had was a plate of rice in 10 different flavors.
Well, that sounds good.
Oh, every course. It was a whole bunch of courses involved in that meal, and it was just a terrific experience.
It sounds like it. Now, I want to play an audio clip and have you tell us a little bit about it. So hold on just for a second.
Okay. That's Greg Mallory. He's praying for God, the Starlight Express.
And you were also the voice of God, were you
And
not?
I became the voice of God, yes. Is that the Tony performance or?
Starlight Express, Broadway, singing I'm Starlight.
At the Gershwin Theater, the old Uris Theater. Greg had the biggest voice on Broadway at the time. I auditioned for 2 years.
Yeah, I'm going to hear the story. I'm going to have you tell the story in just a moment.
They didn't use microphones, did they?
Yes, we had microphones.
You did have microphones?
Wow. All right. Well, let's talk about Starlight Express. I'm going to kind of move forward a little bit here.
Okay.
Tell me, how did you land the role on Starlight Express? Because that's, as a lead performer, that's pretty tough to do.
Well, it's an amazing story because it took over 2 years before I actually got the role. My acting teacher, Tina Satin, and one of the things she made me promise after I got the role was to always promote her acting, theater, and studio. And when I got out of the service, 2 years in Vietnam, 7 years altogether in the United States Air Force, I started taking acting lessons from her. I had been getting singing lessons ever since I was a kid. Her son, she had 2 kids, a son and a daughter, and he had gone to England to see Starlight Express because his father, Lonnie Staten, had the lead role of Papa and the voice of the Starlight. And he brought a whole bunch of the publicity material back with him. And I listened to that very song. And I said, whoa, I got to do that. I got to do that.
Your eyes are sparkling as you're talking about it.
And so he said, well, my father's going to get us an audition because it's coming to New York. I said, really? I went right out and bought a pair of roller skates the very next day because I always loved to roller skate. And so I started practicing that, thinking that his father's going to get us an audition.
Now, how old are you at the time?
I was 39, 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
I give you credit. I fell on a pair of roller skates about then, so.
And so I forgot, because I got out of service when I was 27, but I had been taking the acting lessons all that time. And when it came time for them to audition or open open auditions for the show, his father didn't give us a recommendation or anything. So I went down. Well, another student that was studying with Tina also, he had a whole career in doing commercials and acting, small parts and stuff like that. He's recently retired from it also. He told me about the audition, so I went in on an open call. Got there like 8 o'clock in the morning and didn't get seen until didn't even get seen that day. I had to come back the next day. And so Jonathan Lith Casting, after that audition, said you did well. So I went through a series of auditioning over and over again for 6 months. And then they postponed the show. And I said, well, I guess that's it. They're not bringing it in. The reason was because the show was so huge, they had to find the right theater. And whatever theater they found, they had to convert it to be able to do all of the things that Andrew Lloyd Webber wanted to be done.
The technical aspects of the
Technical
stages
aspects,
moving
yes.
and the lighting and make it all magical.
Right. It had ramps. We had elevators. In fact, when I come out on stage, it was in an elevator. It looked like a big big donut or something. And then that flipper flips up, and I almost got killed that night. Because they called the cues wrong, and it ripped itself apart, and the big old beam came right down where I was sitting, and I jumped off onto the bottom. They said, you should have stayed on. I said, I would have been dead.
Oh, no. Technical difficulties.
Yeah. So anyway, it was that whole thing of waiting all those years, and then they postponed it, like I said, and they started back again. And so my friend said, you want me to have my agent to recommend you so you don't have to go in the cattle call? And so I said, hold on. Jonathan Lift Casting was very good at calling me back over and over and over again. I said, let me give them a call. He said, yes, Steve, why don't you come on back in on Wednesday? So another 6 months of that would happen. And I still didn't get the part. They said, we'll let you know by Thanksgiving of that year, which is 1987.
Okay.
86.
It's a long way.
86. And so Thanksgiving came and gone. I got no call. So after the first of the year of 87, I called Jonathan Lift Casting to find out what had happened and who got the role of Papa, because that's the one I really wanted. But I would have done anything just to be a part of that show.
Okay.
And he said, well, in fact, nobody's gotten the role. How about coming in on Wednesday, first week in January? And so I did, and then they had me come in Saturday, and then they had me come back the next Saturday, and they had me come back on the 25th of January. And for the last time, in the meantime, Vi Higginson's brother, who was in the musical Off-Broadway, Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope. No, Your Arm's Too Short to Box with God.
Okay.
That's the one. And he was in there auditioning, and over that 2-year period, everybody from Richie Havens to all of the guys in Dream Girls had come in to audition, but they needed somebody that could sing opera, blues, and gospel. And so it was a tough call. And plus, to be crazy enough to roller skate. They were auditioning opera singers also. But
on roller skates.
Yeah,
right.
No, I'm not getting on those skates. So I was crazy enough because I loved roller skating. I've been roller skating since I was a kid. We used to steal away from church on a Sunday afternoon and go to the skating rink and then eat Italian and German pastries all the way home, at a discount because they were getting ready to close up. So anyway, they finally auditioned me the last time. Trevor Nunn, the director, they had me come in and sing Papa's Blues, which I had done many times, and Light at the End of the Tunnel, which was the closing song in the show. And then finally he says, here, work on this one with the cocktail. I said, that's the first song I learned. Only You Have the Power Within You, the one you just played.
Right.
And because that's what really turned me on about the show. And I was in there with the rehearsal pianist singing that song, and in rolls Rusty, Greg Mallory, who played the I Think I Can part. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and we sang the duet together and finished it, and they rolled him out. And then about 10 minutes later, Trevor Nunn, the director, came back and says, I want you to play the role of Papa.
And you must have had the biggest smile, because you have the biggest smile on your face right now just remembering that.
I was stunned. I was quiet. And he said, well, what do you got to say? I was mad even because I would have gotten on my knees and begged to do that role. And finally it sunk in that they actually gave it to me.
Wow.
And they were already in rehearsal for 4 weeks.
And you just had to jump in. Didn't you tell me when we spoke on the phone you only had a couple of weeks to learn to roller skate the part itself, the roller skating part?
I'll put it this way. They had me, that was on a Saturday. They had me come in for the first rehearsal for me. That Monday, I had to go to the costume place on Delancey Street, which was right around the corner from 890 Studios where they were rehearsing at. So I went and got fitted. I walked in, and they said, who are you? I said, I'm Steve Fowler. I'm supposed to be playing the role of Papa. And they started yelling, we got a Papa! We got a Papa! So they fitted me to the costume. My understudy had been trying to get the role sewed up for himself. They made him a big suit to make him bigger because he was a dancer. He was a little shorter guy, And he did everything he tried to get that role. God rest his soul. So after I got fitted, I went over to 890. They stopped the rehearsal, And he said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Steve Fowler. He's going to play the role of Papa. They took Greg and put him in front of the mirror, put me in the back of by the windows, and we sang that duet together for the first time.
Wow. Beautiful. That must have given you, I mean, that had to have given you the thrill, because that's an ultimate role as a singer, to have that.
Right, it was. And I learned my blocking within 3 days, because I knew all the lyrics to the song, and I just needed to know where to go.
Oh, thank God, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you knew everything, and then you just had to learn how to do all the skating and deal with all the special effects.
I thought I knew how to skate, but once they got on the set, the first time I was there early, and I went down this ramp, fell on my butt.
Wow.
Went to the other side, fell on my tush again, you know.
So I got to ask you a silly question. Other people were roller skating too, correct? So
yeah, but they've been roller skating for over 30 days. They had all the coaching and skating specialists working with them. And I'm getting on this set. I've always skated on a flat ground, but there wasn't a flat piece except for the very center of the stage on the whole set.
So much more difficult to be able to maneuver around and sing.
Let me put it
at
this
the
way.
same time and do your part.
On opening night, Trevor Nunn, the director, gave everybody a little card, thank you card. And on my card, he said, thank you, Steve Fowler, for your talent and your guts.
Yeah, I guess you need it. Because what if you fall during a Broadway show?
I did. On opening night. I wiped out with my whole family out in the audience. I lost the race, and I was supposed to win the race. My helmet came off. My backpack came off. I had to pick it up and go to the exchange place. And they had already won the race, and I was supposed to go through first. And I lost the race on opening night. And from then on, they had a little picture of a paper train wreck backstage, and they call that Race 2, Papa. I had to live with that for the whole 2 years.
Wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny, but that had to be such a thrill. I want to go backwards just a little bit to, again, when you were younger. Was there a point where you knew that this is what you wanted to do, be a musician, be a singer, or did it just kind of happen as you went along through life and it just worked out that way?
Well, after I got under the tutelage of my music teacher, Edwin Hermanson, and the experiences I had in choral society and the magical group, and we wore Elizabethan costumes, velvet and leotards and the whole 9 yards. We were just gorgeous. And so I had a sense that that's what I really wanted to do. And after I got out of service and I met Tina Satin, and she taught me some acting techniques and the introduction to real theater. Finally, at the age of 41, I really wanted to be an actor-singer.
Got it. Now, you said did you go into the military when you were younger, and were you involved in music in the military also?
I won first. I actually went on my first duty assignment in Phoenix, Arizona, at Luke Air Force Base. F-100s. They had a Tops in Blue contest for all military personnel. Every base contributed actors, singers, dancers, whatever they did to perform. And so I tried out as a solo singer, and there was this old sergeant that sang, "Nobody. I ain't never done nothing to nobody," and he won. And there was a guy that was in a vocal group, 4 guys, and the vocal group won, but the guy had orders for Vietnam. So that left him without one of their lead singers. So the judges said, "Steve, why don't you get together with these guys and see if you can come up with something?" So one of the numbers they were doing, the other, I can't remember the number, but it was a rock and roll number popular at the time. And the second number was a slow number called "Ooh, Baby, Baby." Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. So that guy was still there. So, of course, we kept that in. And so I came up with my knowledge of music that I had been working on all those years and said, well, let's do this jazz thing that the Four Tops did, and I think the Letterman or somebody, and it was Matchmaker from Fiddler on the Roof.
One of my favorites.
Matchmaker, matchmaker, find me a match. And we changed the lyrics to fit 4 guys rather than 3 or 4 girls. And the Air Force Band wrote out the charts for us. And so at the next level, we auditioned and won. Went to the next level, auditioned in one again. And then the guys wanted to change that song to something else because the harmonies were dissonant and they were tight. And we worked on it for months and months and months and perfected it. And we went all the way and won first place Tops in Blue for a vocal group. And from there we went to Las Vegas and then to Hollywood, where they did a video film of the whole Tops in Blue thing. So
That's awesome. I don't want you to go anywhere. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Okay, so we'll be back in just a minute.
Central Payment, your number one credit card merchant service provider in the industry. Providing e-commerce solutions, POS systems, standalone terminals, mobile apps, and much more. Call Central Payments James Carner at 813-777-4332. Looking for the lowest rates in the industry and number one customer service? Call Central Payments James Carner at 813-777-4332. That's James Carner, 813-777-4332.
Do you suffer from back, neck, or body pain? Do you suffer from migraines or have jaw or face pain? Has conventional medicine failed you? Were you injured or in an accident? Call chiropractic physician Dr. Dan Maddock at 813-935-1664. Dr. Dan has helped thousands of patients gain relief for more than 30 years. Dr. Dan is caring, gentle, and takes his time with each patient. He's also a past president of the International Craniopathic Society, a special certification of only 300 chiropractors worldwide. Dr. Dan helps patients from the neck up and the neck down. Dr. Dan accepts most insurance plans. Don't continue to live in pain. Call 813-935-1664 today. That's 813-935-1664 and get on track to better health.
Hi, this is Laurie Zoock, radio host from the world of Laurie Zoock. I was so nervous about getting tattooed, but after doing my due diligence and checking out companies and artists, I had my tattoos done by Justin Dubois of Suncoast Tattoos. He is knowledgeable and artistic, and he gave me a beautiful tattoo, and he put me at ease before, during, and after the process. I just love my new tattoo. Go get your tattoo at Suncoast Tattoos. Call them at 727-575-7935 today. That's 727-575-7935. Or go to suncoasttattoos.net. Are you looking for an affordable way to advertise to thousands of consumers nationally? If you own a business and didn't think you could afford radio advertising, you need to call me, Laurie Zoock, host of the nationally syndicated radio show, The World of Laurie Zoock. My show reaches thousands of people on 29 AM and FM stations nationwide, as well as through the internet. Additionally, your commercials will also be heard on all of my podcasts and throughout social media sites. Don't wait another minute. Call me at 813-777-4908. 813-777-4908, and let me bring your message to the nation and to help you gain more exposure.
Our second musical nominee began as a children's concert written by a father for his son. That father, composer Andrew Lloyd Webber, decided to bring his story of a cross-country contest between a set of racing trains to theatrical life and created the stunning visual spectacular Starlight Express.
The rain, turn the tide.
must now meet the man, the star of Starlight Express, Mr. Steve Fowler. If only use the power within you make the world to turn around and help. If you draw on what you have within you, somewhere deep inside, Starlight Express, are you real? Yes or no? Starlight Express, please answer me yes. I don't want you to go.
That was so awesome, Steve, that I have chills listening to you sing. The same feeling I had when I watched that's you just radiate love and music.
Thank you.
And I can feel it, and I think that's what differentiates a lot of singers and musicians is the feeling and the emotion. Some people are just flat singers. You listen and they might have a great voice, but there's no emotion to it. You have it.
Well, it was a special gift that God gave me, and I don't take credit for that, but I'm doing what he asked me to do, so from that regard, I appreciate it.
I mean, that was beautiful. You talked about some of your teachers. It seemed to have influenced you pretty heavily, though, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think that's important. I want to talk about a definition you used, or actually a couple of words, triple threat, because you have people that aspire, that are listening to the show, that say, hey, I would love to be on Broadway. What is a triple threat?
A triple threat is a person that can act, sing, and dance, not necessarily in that order. Whichever one you do best, that's the one you do first, and then you try and acquire the other two talents or expand on it as much as you can to be that triple threat. And most shows now are review type shows where you have to be able to dance, sing, and act in order to be even seen for a moment. And you only have 90 seconds in most cases, if that much, when you audition for a part. So you really have to be prepared. You have to have a monologue, you have to have 90 seconds of singing, and probably the same amount of time of dancing. And you can't get that unless you study.
So you have to be the best of the best in that 90 seconds, because someone who's listening when you go to audition, I'm assuming there's probably a lot of people listening to you, and it's like a cat call. You just go in, you do your 90 seconds. It better be really good.
If you get that much.
Because they could just cut you off and say, next.
Because they'll say, thank you very much, next.
So is it kind of a cue if you didn't get your 90 seconds that you're not in?
I think so.
And you probably never had to deal with that, though.
No, I did. When you sit out there in that room, waiting room there, and you can hear what's going on in the room, if they don't finish the 90 seconds, you hear them next, and it's over, and the next person is in, and that happens for 8 hours sometimes.
Wow! So you have a lot of people who probably are disappointed when you go in for that 90 seconds. We're talking about triple threats here. Do you think that singing is more important than the acting and the dancing, or not necessarily? Or it depends on the show.
It all depends on the show, and all depends on what they're looking for. So in most cases, they'll do dancers by themselves to fill dance roles. And then if the dance is required to sing and act, then they'll have them do some singing after they realize that they can dance up to the par of what they want. And then if there's a speaking role or an acting part, then they'll have them read a monologue. So you have to have a monologue ready. You have to have your basic jazz or movement because when you go in as a dancer, that's a whole different language. I was never a dancer, so I didn't know the language. So I'm trying to copy what everybody's doing, but there's names for all of those steps that they're doing that choreographers have worked with people that dance for years. So they say, we want this, 8 of this, 4 of this, so forth and so on. And I'm sitting there confused. But thank God at the time, the role that they needed the most was the person that could sing those 3 different types of music, blues, opera, and gospel. And so I was able to do that, and it hadn't been filled yet. They had been auditioning people for 2 years off and on, and they even called the original Papa in London, Lonnie Staton, and they told him, Lonnie, we want you to come, and this is the day I was there on my last call. We want you to come in and do the role of Papa. And he said, yeah, I'd love to come and do it. And he said, I'd like $10,000 a week. I like my name above the title of the song, of the show. And I'd like a tap dance number put in the show on roller skates so he could qualify for a Tony Awards, the triple threat.
Right, right.
And so Trevor Nunn, the director, says, well, Lonnie, we got Steve Fowler here. He can do this role. He said, yeah, I know about Steve Fowler. My ex-wife, one of her students, you're going to trust an $8.5 million show to a guy that's never been on Broadway before? Because he had been on Broadway with Bubbling Brown Sugar with Danny Holgate, my musical arranger, and his musical arranger for many years. Cab's musical arranger also, Cab Calloway.
Okay.
And Trevor Nunn said, yeah, and hung up the phone.
Wow. That's a vote of confidence for you.
Yeah, it was.
That's awesome.
I was the last one hired from the original auditions.
But
Last
you were the
one.
one who deserved it, and you kept pursuing it too,
Yeah.
which is, if you had not pursued it, you might not have gotten it. But you kept following up because you wanted that role, which is, I think, what differentiates you from a lot of other people.
I worked for Xerox as a technician at the time, so
Wow.
we had liberal days off, personal days. So every time that I took a personal day to audition, it cost me $25, $30 to go down to Manhattan and do that each time. So when they finally hired me, Tina, my acting teacher, Denzel Washington's acting teacher.
Ooh.
She taught him before he went to St. Elsewhere and everything else. So, and she worked with Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee and Sidney Poitier. In fact, I met Sidney at her studio, Open Cage Theater, and spoke to him, person to person about his biography I read. We had a little joke. I won't tell that on the air, though.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's all right. That's all right.
But anyway, so she knew all the great people in the theater, and of course Danny Holgate, the musical arranger who did Bubbling Brown Sugar on Broadway, Don't Bother Me, I Can't Cope with Mickey Grant, where she wrote it, acted in it, sang in it, got a Tony Award for all three of those categories, and the Hubie Blake Show with the Hines brothers. And many other Broadway musicals that he was part of. So that's the kind of talent that I was around and coached me into eventually landing on that job on stage.
That is awesome. Now, did you do other Broadway roles before and after, or that was it?
That was it.
That was it. That was. But to say that you did it, that was it to have had.
7 years in the military service as a weapons technician, 13 years as a Xerox technician. And then all of a sudden Broadway was there, and I quit my job
Wow.
At Xerox to go to Broadway.
Amazing story. Now, it's interesting. You studied music because there are people like me as a musician. I mostly read. I don't have perfect pitch. You have perfect pitch.
No, I'd say it's relative pitch. I can go off from time to time if you can't hear. Yeah, perfect pitch, you can sing it no matter what. Mine is relative.
Yours is relative, okay,
Yeah.
but very high relative because you're very close because you were singing a little bit off before, a little bit off the air,
Yeah.
and you were singing perfectly. So I think that's amazing. How did your personal style of singing and acting over the years, how did it evolve or change?
Well, when I was in the military over in Vietnam, I used to buy albums and listen to singers like Nancy Wilson. I think she was one of the greatest free interpretive singers in the business. And so I bought every album she had. And then many, many years later, after I got out of service, I was working for this Italian guy, Rich Renza. And he said to me, "You sound like Billy Eckstein." I said, "Who in the heck is Billy Eckstein?" He said, "Come here." So he went to the jukebox and put it in B3. And then I said, "If I told a lie, if I made you..." He said, "That's Billy Eckstein." So then I started listening to Billy Eckstein. And then eventually I heard someone singing. And I said, "Ooh, this guy's really good." And it was Johnny Hartman. And he did an album with John Coltrane, like 6 songs that they shared, singing and playing the melodies of these great songs, So I patterned myself after listening to those kind of freelance and emotional singers, so to speak.
Yeah, because that's what you have. When you performed at the 41st Tony Awards, what was that like for you? I mean, was that your first? I mean, here you're telling me you were you were in the military and that you worked for Xerox, and now you're shot up to stardom at Starlight Express, and next thing you know, you're singing on the Tony. I would have been freaking out personally, but
What freaked me out was standing next to James Earl Jones.
who you can imitate. I know you can imitate.
I won't say it because it's a different radio station. But anyway, yes, I was standing next to him on the Tony Awards. He had a cold, and I had a cold. And then a few years later, I was working on the Holland America Cruise Lines, and he came on with his family, his wife and a little boy about 5 years old. So I walked up to him. I said, Mr. James, I'm Steve Fowler. I was with you, standing next to you on the Tony Awards. You were in Fences, and I did Starlight Express. And his little boy looked up at me and says, you was in Starlight Express? I said, yes, son, I was in Starlight Express. Oh, you a star. I said, no. And I put my arms around James Ellis. I said, your daddy's the star. So I autographed the picture to Master James Earl Jones Jr. from Papa Starlight Express.
Oh, he must have just melted over that, I would think. Wow.
He's got to be in his 30s now. So
yeah.
I mean,
well, his dad wasn't famous to him, but you were.
Yeah, right, because he saw the show. And I stood next to James L. Jones. That was the highest moment in my life, in my opinion.
That's awesome. Now, I know you also performed on cruise lines. Talk a little bit about that and what it was like to do that.
Well, I started working out on, let's see. I had put my act together many years before with Danny Holgate, Cab Calloway's musical director. I got a whole show together, 45 minutes to an hour, and eventually I got 3 hours worth of charted music for big bands. And so I got married on the stage at Starlight Express in the second year, and my father officiated the ceremony. And Danny, after we got married, the wife was an opera singer at the time, and so we tried to combine the talents, and he took us down to the biggest cruise agency in New York and of all times. Slipped my name.
That's right.
Anyway, so we went and auditioned for them, and they didn't have a position for us, but they sent us over to Charlie Rapp Agency, which is the biggest entertainment agency. They handle a lot of great stars up in the mountains, the Catskills, the Borscht Belt, and the Italian Alps, they call it for nicknames, the Pines, the Concord Hotel. So since I was fresh off the show, they got me a job at the Concord Hotel. And, of course, I asked my wife to sing with me at the time. So we put together a medley of West Side Story and a medley of Starlight Express and some Irving Berlin. And so we started doing that up in the mountains. And the cruise agency found out about it, and they asked us to go on the Holland America line on their flagship, the Rotterdam, to sing, to do the work together. And that's how after we got married, we started doing that.
That's
until
good.
the marriage ended, and then I kept doing it by myself after that for many years.
Yeah, it sounds like you're fun doing it. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Steve Fowler.
Highly competitive and hectic world is fraught with dishonesty and challenges. Critical decisions must be made on a daily basis with accuracy when substantial assets are at risk. When you are confronted with a decision point involving opportunity and risk, consult with Sharpline Investigations, statewide experts in due diligence, investigations, and litigation support. Sharpline's professionals work with clients to conduct interviews, deep background investigations, and develop facts and intelligence related to litigation. When circumstances require confidential and expert fact-finding, turn to Sharpline Investigations, the statewide leaders in investigations and risk mitigation. Visit sharplineinvestigations.com or call 855-394-0042.
Are you looking for an affordable way to advertise to thousands of consumers nationally? If you own a business and didn't think you could afford radio advertising, you need to call me, Laurie Zoock, host of the nationally syndicated radio show, The World of Laurie Zoock. My show reaches thousands of people on 29 AM and FM stations nationwide, as well as through the internet. Additionally, your commercials will also be heard on my podcasts and throughout social media sites. Don't wait another minute. Call me at 813-777-4908. 813-777-4908 and let me bring your message to the nation and help you gain more exposure.
Central Payment, your number one credit card merchant service provider in the industry. Providing e-commerce solutions, POS systems, standalone terminals, mobile apps, and much more. Call Central Payments James Carner at 813-777-4332. Looking for the lowest rates in the industry and number one customer service? Call Central Payments James Carner at 813-777-4332. That's James Carner, 813-777-4332.
That's the firemen climbing the twin stairs on their way to heaven.
Well, I want you to share that story I saw on your website about a fireman's hands on September 11th.
Believe it or not, that's a musical called Burning Love. Steve Mattei wrote the lyrics to that song and a whole musical that was supposed to be a screenplay. And I think it ended up being on television, but they never went in the direction that this musical went. The guy was trying to introduce it to be a movie or something like that, and none of the people would pick it up. So Steve Mattei took it and turned it into a musical. The young man that I was singing that song for was a rich kid in the musical who I had assigned a female instructor to teach him how to be a firefighter, because he was just goofing off, and his father knew me. I'm the black commissioner, believe it or not, in New York, right? Fat chance. But anyway, so he wasn't quite getting it, but he did fall in love with this female instructor, and so I sang this song to teach both of them what a fireman's job in life was all about. And it was 1995, after the show had long been over, that the Twin Towers, that I auditioned, well, not auditioned, actually we did a showcase of this musical for all of the Schubert theaters and so forth, and they didn't pick it up. So when 9/11 happened, I'm sitting there watching the planes going to the building, and the song came right back into my head. So I said, I got to record this. So it was just on a piece of scrap paper. There was no music written down. It's just the lyrics. And I got a local musician who was a very fine musician in Missouri, where I was living at the time. And I sang the tape to him, or showed him the tape, and then he wrote down he wrote the chords, and then we recorded it, and I sent it to New York to my copyist, and he did a professional rendering of it. And so when 9/11, the first anniversary of 9/11, I sang it for the first time to a live audience on the steps of Jefferson City, with a statue of Thomas Jefferson behind me, to that memorial service. And there wasn't a dry eye any place on the lawn. It took me a week to actually complete the song, because I didn't have the chorus after 9/11 to. I tried to put one together, it just didn't work. And so for a whole week I tried putting something in that spot, and I was sent the Fireman's Prayer that's been in existence since 1955. And it fit perfectly where the chorus is supposed to go, verbatim down to the second. And so I rendered that, I put that in there, and then did the tag at the end, "Know We Care, grateful that you're there."
Yeah, I mean, that was a very emotional thing happening, especially September 11th has just passed again, and being from that area myself, I'll just cry if I even talk about it. Yeah. What do you think the secret is to success? Big question.
Well, having something inside you that has to come out. I always tell other musicians, no matter what they do, singers, dancers, actors, I said, God gave you a talent. It's not yours. You have to share it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given it to you. He gave it to you with the purpose of sharing it. And whenever you're in the process of sharing it with everyone and whomever, it just goes out into the universe and heals and does wonderful things to other people, inspires other people to want to do the same thing. That's what it's all about. It's not about your ego or being better than somebody else. It has nothing to do with competition. It has to do with just giving of your soul and your spirit, something that God gave you.
And I think that's an awesome answer. And I want to thank you very much for being with me today. I know that you still perform, you do weddings, parties, corporate events, you still sing. How can people reach you?
Well, they can reach me on my website, stevefowler.net. STEVFOWLER.net. And my info is on there. And if I'm doing anything, I'll put that on the website. But you can always call me or email me, and I'll be happy to let you know what I'm doing.
Do you want to give out your phone number?
Well, it's 813-803-3358.
Very good. Thanks again, Steve, for joining me today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week on The World of Laurie Zoock.
Special gift from someone that you never met. And above all, their selfless call is to save lives. They strive to do